This is your place for all things Detroit Red Wings and all things Chicago Blackhawks. With your hosts, Jordan Linscott, David Barnhouse, Nick LePage, and Tim Stompanato. This is the Stick Blade Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Stick Blade Podcast. It's your place for all things Detroit Red Wings, all things Chicago Blackhawks, and news around the NHL. On tonight's show, it's going to be a little bit of a short one. Again, the Blackhawks and Red Wings are out of the postseason, and the playoffs are heavily underway. It's basically down to the final four teams now at this point, so we're going to be doing a couple things on the Hawks and Wings news. The Hawks mainly because the Wings really have nothing going on this week, and we're making up for that with Blackhawks talk. On the Blackhawks side of the podcast, we're going to be talking about the fact that rumors have it that the Blackhawks are in on Jack Eichel, what that looks like from their end on a trade, and even just what does that mean for their club if they make that trade. Also, the sexual assault allegations that have came out. We're going to sort of dive into what exactly has been said. Nothing has officially came out in terms of, court proceedings or anything like that, but it's out there. It's in the news, and you kind of have to talk about that because it's something that doesn't really get to go away now. The Wings, really nothing to talk about except for the fact that maybe they might be in on high-end defenseman Seth Jones. But other than that, nothing really on the Wings news to talk about.
I didn't know that.
And then we're going to talk about the Final Four of the NHL because we're in the semifinals now, and I don't think anybody saw Montreal being here. I don't think anybody saw the New York Islanders being here.
There's no rules anymore. It's chaos, and I love it.
There are no rules.
It's a mishmash, and I want to talk about it because I think it's kind of fun that we're seeing just what should not have been our Final Four being here. Guys, welcome to the podcast. How are you guys doing tonight?
That good, huh, David? Please control your excitement for the fans.
Sorry, guys. I've been working outside in the humid 100-degree heat index all day today.
Well, I'm just frankly glad that my house is still standing. We had some really bad storms yesterday. A whole tornado cut through around like 11 p.m. last night. So a lot of people were asleep already when the sirens started going off.
It was a surprise tornado?
It was a surprise tornado. We knew it was going to storm last night, but we didn't know that like a tornado was coming, and it came, and it was one of the most devastating tornadoes actually that I've seen in our area since I've been alive. Actually,
it's so crazy because my dad lives in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and
dude, it was terrible up here yesterday.
Was it really?
Yeah.
And they same thing. Everyone's bad, but they didn't have a storm. There was no sirens. They just woke up and some houses were smashed up. An old church was smashed up.
That's terrifying.
Tornado came through, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, we hung out in the basement till about midnight 30 and called it a day at that point. Everything had passed. Luckily, we were good. I know some people that weren't so lucky, and so I'm thinking of all them. And yeah, natural disasters, man.
Nature's scary.
Nature is scary. I don't trust it.
All right. So speaking of natural disasters, I kind of want to just get this topic out of the way. The disaster that is the sexual assault allegations that have come out about the Blackhawks organization. There's a lot to dive into here. For anybody who hasn't been following, basically, I believe it was a video coach from the Blackhawks.
Yes, video analysis coach.
He was basically accused of sexual assault, and that on its own is already terrible. But the story gets worse. Again, this is not fact, not legal fact that has came out. But again, we're talking these
allegations
are the reports and allegations. So it's kind of a big allegation to throw someone's way. But allegations the upper management knew about this, kept silent, and then gave recommendations on this person when they left. This is a bad look on so many levels.
This is a nightmare scenario for any organization. I work in HR as my day job. This is a nightmare scenario whether it's from a PR standpoint, from a human decency standpoint, these are very serious allegations that the Blackhawks as an organization have to reckon with and have to get sorted out, whether it's, whatever happens with that, they have to figure that out. And we talked about this a little bit, it gets progressively worse as you go down the timeline. You've got the two players who wish to remain anonymous that have launched the allegations that they reported to the mental skills coach, but a video coach sexually assaulted, sexually harassed them, which on its own is a terrible situation, but it is also indicative of a hockey culture that we are aware of and people are working to fix. Dan Carcillo is an outspoken advocate for fixing a lot of these hazing and abuse, the hazing and abuse that runs rampant in a lot of these organizations. But then you take it a step further and you find out in allegation, again, alleged, that it was then reported to the mental skills coach, who then reported it to McDonough, Bowman, McIsaac, the biggest big shots of the organization, second only to Rocky Wirtz. And they didn't just stay silent, they buried it. Allegedly. Again, I need to keep repeating this. We are operating as this is alleged information, but this is what has been put forward. And so that on its own, again, a terrible situation. That is management and people that you trust to represent your interests burying a situation because it's inconvenient PR. It's a bad story. We're in the middle of the famous 2010 Cup run. But then you go even a step further and it really becomes the worst of a terrible situation where they not only didn't let go of the video coach, but they also gave a positive recommendation for him to go work at Michigan. Was it Michigan University or Michigan State? Do you?
Irrelevant.
Yeah,
Irrelevant.
It doesn't matter. But it was a college, and this person did go on to assault a college student. And this is when you put A to B to C. If this comes out as true, if everything comes out and in a court of law, they say, yeah, this is all here, this is fact, there is no salvaging this for anyone in those management positions. The organization PR. Has to let them go if that happens.
There is no PR fix for something like that.
There's no way. I mean, you could try and spin it that we've already let go of John McDonough. We became aware, Rocky Wirtz may have never gotten up to him. It might have been insulated at that level. But once it is brought to light, you need to launch your own investigations. You need to make sure that everyone is above the level. Scott Powers and Mark Lazarus put together a fantastic article in The Athletic breaking down the step-by-steps and the timeline. And they asked a very important question of, this all happened during the 2010 Cup run, the beginning really of the Blackhawks dynasty in the modern era. Can you separate the on-ice success and glory of the organization and this horrible dark side if it comes to truth? And I guess that's the thing that me as like a fan, I have to reckon with. And I think where I'm at right now, you sort of live in these two worlds of, well, the players, and thank God none of this has come out saying anything about Joe Quenneville. In fact, players like Dan Carcillo have often come out and been like, Joe Quenneville is one of the all-time kindest and like best coaches as a human being I've ever had. So like, thank God for that. But you can have the success that the Blackhawks players and the coaching staff that's on the ice with them, they went on to do, and also acknowledge that the Blackhawks as an organization and a business now have a tarnished legacy and a mark that's always going to be connected to that. It doesn't negate, I don't think it'll negate the cup run and the success of the team, but I think the Blackhawks have thrived a long time as a squeaky clean organization, a strong, family organization. And this seriously hurts that to a point where this isn't just a PR fix. This is a serious reckoning that you've got some of your top people. I mean, it's no different than the Me Too movement. You've got incredibly powerful people that either, abused their position or used their position to protect people that abused others. There's no getting out of this. The only way out of it is acknowledging and moving through it.
So first off, nothing takes away from what the players did.
No,
to
I
earn those
agree
cups.
with that.
Nothing at
No.
all. Duncan Keith, Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Patrick Shark, Nicholas Hjalmarsson, those guys, they put in the work. Nothing tarnishes what they've done. But if this all comes out to be like true, heads have got to roll. There's no way you can have this stuff come out. And again, I'm saying if it's all true,
Right.
and have nothing happen here, there are going to be such big organizational changes in the Blackhawks if this is actually legit.
Yeah. We could see a cleaning house of the front office staff.
That's my biggest fear, is that this goes through and it either settles and goes away and no one ever really resolves it. And I would feel very gross about that. Or things do come to light. It does come true or prove true in court, and people don't get let go. People get like promoted up or like promoted out, and early retirement, that sort of stuff. Like, I would feel twice as gross about that. I don't know, like, they owe a lot to the fans and the people, and to do right by these human beings that they hurt. Allegedly. It's a terrible situation, because even now that things have been put out there, it's a terrible situation, because regardless, it is on the organization now to solve this, frankly.
Yes. We keep saying allegedly, of course, because we don't know the full story. But in situations like this, you always want to lean towards the victim, especially when it's not one but two players
Exactly.
that came forward, and that the person that was responsible went to another place and had gotten in trouble again. So
where it's confirmed.
The writing right there is on the wall.
It's not a good timeline, and it's not a good connection of dots. I don't feel good about it. Nope. I don't feel confident in this one. There's things in the past where I'm like, okay, let's see how this plays out, because there's a lot of I'm going to continue to follow this story, partly because I want to see the truth, and partly because I want to see how the organization responds.
Tim, since I haven't followed it as much as you have, being the Wings fan to the Blackhawks fan, has Lazarus or Powers from The Athletic had anything to say about it that you've seen?
Yeah. They're doing a really good job, because this originally came out like a month or so ago as the initial allegations before everything kept getting worse. It's gotten worse by the week, which really isn't a good sign. But people were saying like, hey, why aren't you reporting on this? Other people are coming out with things. And Mark Lazarus, just like a week ago, was like, hey, we're putting something together. We are doing our due diligence. This is the kind of story that you do not rush.
Yep.
This is the kind of thing where you check your sources, you make sure you know what you're doing, you get things right, because you cannot screw this up.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing with media all the time. You see it in sports and everything.
Everyone wants to be first. Everyone wants to break the story. And it is again, the people deserve a right to know 100% every time. Yep. But you want to make sure it's done right, and that you break the story with all the pieces, or at least as many pieces as like you legitimately can. So when Lazarus and Powers released that story last week, I thought it was a really nice, there weren't a lot of opinions in it. It was very true journalism of this is the information at hand. This is what it's looking like at this point. This is what it would mean. This is the implication of like, if this is true, this is what would have to happen, things like that. I always hate like a situation like this plugging something, but like if you have a subscription to The Athletic, give it a read. It's a very good breakdown of a very bad situation. So, and again, it's hard. Like I'm a fan. I've grown up a fan of the Blackhawks and stuff like that. And like, I still feel like I can be a fan of the team. This wouldn't be the first organization that like I've thought was gross, but also like liked the people, liked the players. But I really need the organization to not screw this up.
And that's what sucks. Like you see things with certain organizations where you want to support the team still. Like, for example, the Detroit Lions are owned by the Ford family. Gerald Ford has a history with being a Nazi sympathizer and anti-Semitic stuff. There's a member of the Ford family currently who has donated monies to organizations that have had anti-Semitic ties. And being a Jewish person, that's kind of hurtful, but I still want to support my Lions.
I saw somebody make a comment about like the Cubs because the Ricketts have not a great reputation. That you're not a fan of a team because of its owners. A lot of owners of sports organizations are kind of gross people and like not great folk. Not saying anyone in general, not trying to slander anybody. They're very wealthy people, and there's a lot of times where there's a lot more skeletons in the closet. That said, yes, I don't root for the Blackhawks because I root for the Wirtzes. I thought Dollar Bill Wirtz was a terrible human being.
I mean, Jordan, at least with us, we have the Illiches, and we've seen the good that the Illich family's done. Like Mike Illich paid Rosa Parks rent for like the last 10, 20 years of her life.
I love that.
Like, at least we have that good organization.
But like, there comes a point in time when it is hard to separate. And I think I can separate it from the 2010 Cup run if the organization doesn't bungle or try to hide or try to PR spin their way out of this.
Now, I have another question for you, Tim.
Please.
If these allegations, like we said, it's getting worse and worse by the week.
Man, it's bad.
I mean, if all signs point to yes, could you see players like Kane and Taves making a statement and like kind of taking a stand against the ownership?
That's such a like tricky situation.
I know. That's what I'm wondering.
You know what? I think that there are players that would. I think if this was the NBA or the NFL or even the MLB, we would see it. I would say with confidence we would see it. Hockey is still very much that.
They don't really want to talk about it.
They toe the company line, and if they can't say anything positive, they don't say anything. That's just, again, it's part of that hockey culture that like not we as in what am I doing, but like people are trying to like fix and adjust as like being more outspoken about things. I don't know.
I mean, we saw during the election season, the Atlanta Dream, the WNBA team, kind of wear the shirts and basically tell them Kelly Loeffler, the former senator of Georgia, she owns the team or partially owns, I don't know what it was, but they basically were speaking out against her. Like, we want you out. The things you say and the things you do not fit what we want for our team. So I don't see NHL players doing that because not a lot of them are American.
Well, and even in this situation, I just think there's a lot of NHL players where it is drilled into them and conditioned in them as kids that you don't show too much personality.
Yep.
And you don't, it's the team. It's the crest on the front, not the name on the back, as to quote Letterkenny. But that's really how a lot of hockey players carry themselves. Mm-hmm. And I also think it's a terrible position to put the players in.
Oh, for sure.
stand up to. I don't know. It's just because nobody wins in that situation. I think it all falls on the organization.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we've had, I think Taves, what was Taves a big speaker out of proponent for a couple of years ago?
I mean,
the
climate change.
Climate change. Okay.
Yeah, and he sort of got
not...
and again, people are terrible. They lambasted him and said, stick to playing hockey and stuff like that. God forbid you have an opinion in the world you live in, on the
suck.
environment of all things. But Taze might. I think that in this situation, it's less about Americans, Canadians, Russian, whatever, and more about I don't know that man. Again, if this all comes out, it's an unfair position to put the players in that management put them in that situation potentially.
Yep.
I mean, I'll be honest, if a player like Jonathan Taves or Patrick Kane comes out and condemns what management did here and is willing to, quote unquote, take the heat for a minute, I feel like at that point, the fan base is going to stand behind that player and be like, yep, management changes need to happen
100%.
right now.
Yeah. There's things that people in our country kind of don't have an awful opinion about, and that's, sexual assault allegations. People tend to, in our country, I'm saying that with, some positive hopes for people, that we tend to favor the victim. We tend to believe the victim and support the victim because...
Like the other thing for me on the situation is this, you brought up, again, Jonathan Taves, people telling him, like, keep your opinion to yourself, like that sort of stuff. But this isn't a political issue. This isn't any sort of like a social issue. This is a human decency issue.
Yeah.
And I think you'd have a very hard time finding anybody who's like, yeah, sexual assault, perfectly fine, no big deal.
I know. Don't read Twitter comments and Facebook comments then, because people are absolutely awful.
Don't go to Parler.
Yeah, they would let me on Parler. Honestly, they'd smell my my social beliefs a mile away. But seriously, I've read again. Twitter can be a cesspool because your people are anonymous and makes them feel big. Yep. But all I can say, because we've covered everything that can be covered on this realistically before we start spinning into theories and whatnot. I just want to cover what's out there now, and that it would be us not taking the role that we've chosen as people who report on our teams seriously if we were to ignore something like this. And I think it's something that as a fan, I have to reconcile with and figure out. And I have an obligation to keep watching it, even if it's uncomfortable. And so we're going to keep doing that. And if there are updates, we're going to let people know. And I just brace for what's going to happen.
Yep.
I hope people do the right thing, but we got here by people not doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. We got to hope that the right thing happens.
That's it. Like, we're planning on continuing to report on this story as it develops, whether that be positive or negative. And, I'll stand by it. Like, if everything comes to light and this ends up being false, I'll say, hey, these allegations were proven to be false. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case, just given the track record and sequence of events that we're looking at. But either way, we're going to continue reporting on this as it develops, because this is something that's not, it's not something you swipe under the rug or you give
don't
it 2
ignore
seconds
it because it's uncomfortable.
You have to kind of, push yourself through that uncomfortable period.
Yep.
Yeah. Score update of the hockey playoffs. Tampa Bay is up 3-0. I mean, the Islanders were up by a lot the last game. This is going to be I think it's going to go game 7.
It's going to 7 games. I hope that it goes to 7 games, because, man, I get that the Islanders get slammed for playing boring hockey, but I don't understand how hockey could be boring when you are holding your own against the offensive juggernaut, former Stanley Cup champs that are the Lightning. You play trap game all day long. It ain't boring. It's great.
Boring hockey, chance to win the cup. Boring hockey. I mean, I would trade boring hockey if we're going to be in the Stanley Cup race.
My God. Yeah, absolutely.
If I was fucking watching the Red Wings and like going, oh, I would play the Travis, but we're going to win the cup. We're going to win the cup. Like, it's worth it.
Yeah, no, I love, and honestly, the Islanders goaltending, like, look, Vasilevsky is better than both Varlamov and Sorokin, but Varlamov and Sorokin having that combination is incredibly valuable.
It's like having a 1A and 1B, kind of like Detroit had this season.
Kind of like Vegas has right now.
Yeah, it's almost like if you have you got two starter per caliber goaltenders, you're kind of gonna do all right.
I think that's where the NHL is going. I think the days of relying on a Vasilevsky. I mean, if you have a Vasilevsky, if you have a Carey Price, awesome. That said, if you have a Carey Price and then an AHL caliber backup, not that Josh Allen. I mean, what's that? Whatever the Allen that Jake Allen. That's it. I think Josh Allen's a football player. Jake Allen is a 1B. Like, he's a step above backup. He's like a fringe starter. But Carey Price has been run into the ground before because they didn't have a quality backup. I think you've got to have two people that could be starters moving forward.
Yep.
I mean, like, you look at the rest of the NHL, and that's
the way they're moving.
That is how the NHL is moving. You know, you've got a whole bunch of people, or a whole bunch of teams, and you either have the superstar who's getting, $8, $9, $10 million, or you've got the starter who's making like 5 or 6, and then the fringe, or not even really fringe starter, but like the 1B, so to speak, who's making like 3 or 4, and you're about in the same spot. The only difference is when the superstar isn't pulling their weight, your team is SOL.
Or when you have an opportunity like Vegas has, where like Fleury faltered a little bit, hey, we can change it up and put Leonard in because they're both goaltenders that 90% of the league would love to have as their 1A. They can switch that up.
I know we didn't have much Wings news, but I know we didn't have any, but there was 2 little pieces I thought of. Awards voting. Glenn Denning, I think, received a few votes for the Selke, I believe.
Okay.
I want to say it was
that's very fair.
And Zadina received a 2nd place vote for the Lady Byng. I didn't realize he didn't take a single
not a single one.
That's remarkable. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't get more votes. I mean, he's on a bad Detroit team, so that doesn't help. But
you don't see it's unfortunate because you don't see teams that struggle but have players that kind of stand out in the stat line for those types of things get votes. Yes, if we had a guy going for the Rocket Richard Trophy because he was just scoring more goals than everybody else, but the rest of the team sucked, that's the trophy they win because that is reflective of the goals they're scoring. But in terms of like defensive player of the defensive offensive player or most gentlemanly player, whatever, we're going to get overlooked by the teams that are doing better than us. And that's just the way it is. Like Matthew Stafford, this season, we went to the playoffs in, I think, 2011, threw for over 5,000 yards. Not many quarterbacks have done that.
Freaking insane.
Wasn't even considered for the MVP.
The other piece of or actually, I want to move on to some brighter news after we're talking about the whole sexual assault allegations, because I would like to actually have like a happy podcast. We've been talking about the past couple of weeks, right? The Jack Eichel sweepstakes.
We've been talking about Eichel Watch for almost over a year now.
Okay,
at least
so
I have.
Rumor has it that the Chicago Blackhawks are going to be in on Jack Eichel, trying to make it legitimately happen. Now, you can say there's weight to it. You can say there's not. If it's getting reported on, I'm going to assume there's at least some weight. And I've seen people online saying, oh, well, every team's going to take a swing at him. Every team will, but every team taking a swing at him will not make the news. No, I want to ask you 2 questions, Tim. Do you think that the Hawks are actually serious about landing him? And then if they do, what do you expect them to have to give up? And are you comfortable with them giving up? Because from all the reports I've been reading, it's a pretty hefty ask.
Look, I like Ike. I love Jackie Eichel. Big fan. I think that he's been buried on Buffalo. I think that his best is yet to come, and I don't think it's going to come with Buffalo. And I think he could be a Matthews level player, maybe not a McDavid, but a Matthews level player for sure, on a real team that's not Buffalo. So first, do I think I think that with the Blackhawks, even though every team is going to take a swing at him, I think the Blackhawks make it to that level above everybody in the sense of it fills a very valid need. We need another incredible guaranteed top or second line player, and that's Jack Eichel. He's a phenomenal forward. He's a center. Our team gets better with him, and there is no doubt in my mind about that. It's criminal how he's underrated in sort of the way that he is. And again, people are like, oh, Eichel's not as big of a deal. And I'm like, he's on Buffalo. He can't do everything there.
Gretzky would struggle on Buffalo.
Yeah, on this current Buffalo and this current version of the NHL, he would. I think he would. That said, I think that we're in it more than maybe some of the other teams that are definitely out or interested. I cannot imagine at this time that we are in the top 5 teams that would be actually going all in, no holds barred, whatever the cost to get him. Because his cap hit hurts. I think that, because he's like making 10 or 10.5 or something like in the 10s.
It's in the 10s, yeah.
Yeah, that's a tall ask given that we've got other people. Now, I think that you ask, what's the package look like? What do we got to get about? It starts with Doc. I think realistically, it starts with Doc in the first round pick. I think that it includes at least one of our young defensemen. And that could be, I think if we're giving up Doc, this year's first and next year's first, which I think is a realistic ask for Buffalo, I think then we give them, I'd like to give them Bodan, maybe, or Kalnick. That said, they'd probably want either Mitchell or Boquist. And like, I'm still pretty high on Boquist. I know that people get on him, but he's only 20 years old and he's been holding his own in the NHL and looking more and more natural. And we see him growing every year. I think by 22, he's going to be a legitimate offensive defenseman. That's my hot take. But realistically, I think that we could get away if other teams bail out, if a lot of circumstances hit right. I think for Eichel, and probably something else like a pick or something, like there's never just for Eichel
pick.
I think it'll be Doc, this year's first, next year's first, next year's second, and a top, and at least a top 5 of our defensive prospects.
Okay.
I think with a player the caliber of Eichel and how he's not even scratching his prime yet, he's their captain. Next to Rasmus Dahlin, he's their star.
100%.
I think it's got to be an RG3 trade up trade deal where it's going to hurt and you don't know how well it's going to pay off. Hopefully he can make things work. I mean, it'll be the 1-2 of him and Taves.
Taves, yeah.
I think you're hitting all the right notes, but I think it's going to be Boquist too, and not a 1-5. I think it's going to be.
It'll have to be either
Boquist 1-1-2.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, probably. I hate it because in the world of negotiating, I don't want to give up what I feel like is everything, even for something that I know is going to improve us.
Mm-hmm.
because getting Eichel is going to be that good. I believe that. That said, he's coming off some neck stuff. We hope that he gets full range back. Necks are weird. Neck injuries are weird. I don't know. And Taze is a big question mark. That said, we have Suter, we have Kurashev, we have guys that could theoretically slot into that second line. Strome is still with the team. We could figure something out. Man, a line of Eichel, the All-American line of Eichel, DeBrincat, and Kane does sound absolutely incredible, though.
It does sound great.
That said,
what's left after that?
Yeah. I mean, we've got a lot of middle six guys, but I don't know. And again, we would theoretically, here's the thing, because we would trade essentially Doc and Eichel. We'd swap centers. And then we'd give up. Now, picks are overrated, even first round picks. And hopefully we're not going to be too high up. So you get rid of the first round picks. Okay, whatever, you call it a day. You get rid of a second round pick. It really, we'll figure it out. We'll trade somebody and get a pick back. I know people are going to get on me for this, but I don't want to give up on Boquist. And it's so irrational in the sense of like, Eichel is a known commodity, even where he's at now, where he's only going to go up. I don't know. Maybe
I think a trade like that hurts more than it helps, but that's just me.
I do too. Especially, I think that it's the wrong spot in our rebuild. I think if Eichel was the only thing missing and not defense too, then if we had Crawford 3 years ago, if we had at least Hjalmarsson, if we had like some sort of like top 3 people on the blue line, and Eichel was the piece, we were missing one more bona fide superstar forward, and we're in it to win it. That's when you make the Eichel trade. I think right now Eichel could get us into the playoffs with who we've got, but
how far would you go?
Our defense isn't mature yet. The future of our defense isn't quite there yet to make that deep run. And our goaltending is still, I love Lankinen, but if we only have Lankinen, we ran him into the ground this year and his product the last month showed. We have other places. I would rather see us go after Dougie Hamilton because I don't think Seth Jones is right for us. I'd rather see us go after Dougie Hamilton and figure out our forward core from what we have.
All right, so I'm going to throw some names out here, and I'm going to see if you guys can figure out what the commonalities are between them, okay? No. John Tavares, Erik Karlsson, and Jack Eichel. Any guesses? Because if not, I'm going to tell you what they are. All right.
Struggle.
Players who are either in their time or are either in their prime or entering their prime. Players who are expensive, and players who were basically a redundant piece on the team that they went to.
All of the above.
All of the above.
Yes.
So
suck it, Tim. Suck it, you suck.
They were also all captains.
That too. But
I was right too.
So let me explain why I absolutely hate this deal for Chicago.
All right.
It's not that I don't want to see Eichel on Chicago, and it's not that I think that he would not thrive. But a couple things with Chicago. One, their forward pool is already stupid expensive. If you add Jack Eichel here, you're literally the Maple Leafs at that point. You are basically projecting about $40 million to your forward pool. And right now you have Kirby Dach on a cheap deal filling assuming Jonathan Toews is healthy, second line centerman role. You trade Dach away. You have no cheap second line or even top line center in your system anymore. You trade Boquist away. You basically got rid of your cheap top pair defenseman of the future, who's going to be an offensive guy. If you trade away your draft pick from this year, you guys are picking, 11th, I think, this year?
Yep.
Now, again, first round draft picks can either boom or bust, but you know what? At the 11 spot, you could find a superstar or even a 1B centerman, kind of like Detroit did with Dylan Larkin at 15 a couple years ago, or like the Boston Bruins found superstar winger David Pastrnak. Like, those aren't valueless assets.
I think Cole Sillinger is arguably, just from what I've read on him, the best pure goal scorer or sniper in this draft, and we could get him at 11. That's not a question to me. What we need is depth scoring, and that's somebody that we could use. I agree with you. I don't think that I love Eichel. And there is no part of me that says, well, we wouldn't be better with, of course we'd be better with Eichel, but I don't think the team makeup and where we're at makes sense to swing for Eichel and sacrifice the future.
And like, that's the other thing. If Chicago really does pull a trade on Jack Eichel, they are in win now mode. Like, that whole announcement of them being in a rebuild from, what was it, last season or season before, that is out the window. Season. They are in win now mode.
And that said, that happened with the New York Rangers. They said, hey, we're in the middle of we are doing a rebuild. And then they won the Panarin sweepstakes and they signed Panarin, and then they got Kakko and Lafreniere, and all of a sudden it escalated the rebuild.
Freaking cheaters.
But that's the thing, like, it can really boom or bust for them. And I don't know if I'd be comfortable taking a gamble on it busting your rebuild that long.
I also, and this is such a, I really like the culture and the chemistry in the dressing room right now. And bringing in, it's one thing if you bring somebody like when Ryan O'Reilly escaped from Buffalo and he went to the Blues, that was a guy that just, he wanted to be with a team that was excited to play hockey. And he said, like, I got re-energized there. Eichel is going from being a captain and the most vocal presence in the room, coming to Chicago with all his career, all he's known is this Buffalo awfulness. I don't know if he's the kind of player that, and again, it's a roll of the dice. You look at person organization fit. Is he going to come into the room and absorb what the chemistry and the culture of the room is? Or is he going to come in and exert onto the room? And again, we don't know, but why roll the dice on that?
Like, the other thing is, like, the Hawks, I mean, yeah, they haven't been in the playoffs the past couple of years, granted. And I know you guys are still coming out of those cup years, but, and I got to admit, me and David as Wings fans, our fan base is just as guilty of this, but we forgot what it's like to be in the dumpster. And if you trade for Eichel now, when that contract expires, when Taves and Kane and Keith are all gone, and you have basically no one top line centerman of the future in Kirby Dach because you traded him away. You don't have a top pair defenseman in Adam Boquist because you traded him away. That's not a good time.
No. If we swing for Eichel, it says we are going to get one more cup in the Kane Taves era of these current contracts, and future be damned.
Mm-hmm. It's essentially, are you going to ease into the wall or are you going to hit the wall? And if you trade for Eichel, you're saying, I'm going to hit the wall.
Just slap that wall right in its face.
And we had just been starting to slide back up a little bit, and it's incremental progress. I don't know. I know there's going to be people. I feel like if Nick was here, he would raise some really good arguments for Jack Eichel and going for it. Just from like what we've talked about a little bit. But yeah, I can't in good conscience say that where I'm at, where I think the team is at, I think that it wouldn't be the best use of what we have. I still think we should get a number one defenseman.
Mm-hmm. Like, that, I think, is Chicago's bigger piece to look at, is getting a one defenseman. Now, if one comes available on the market in free agency, okay, then maybe you could realistically look at that, because again, Chicago's contract situation this coming season or even next 2 or 3 seasons, you guys are actually sitting okay.
If he doesn't price himself out of it, I think Dougie Hamilton is a good because he's a left wing. He's a left-handed defenseman, if I recall. And that makes sense to us because we have a glut of right-handed defensemen. I don't know. I think that he would be a good addition to be our number one defenseman.
And like, honestly, I think if Chicago's going to make a free agency move or trade, it makes so much more sense to go for a one defenseman because, again, Boquist, he looks to be good, but we don't know if he's going to be a number one. He might be a top pair guy if he continues to grow, but
he's also not going to be your shutdown. He's an offensive defenseman. At his best, he's Stanley Cup final Erik Karlsson. Is best dream peak potential, but Stanley Cup final Erik Karlsson was an offensive defenseman. You need defensive defensemen and you need two-way defensemen. Duncan Keith was a two-way defenseman with a lot of offensive potential. You need somebody with Boquist to let him run wild and do his thing.
And that's the thing. Going for Eichel does not solve that problem.
It doesn't solve any of our it provides us with a great player, but it doesn't fill any holes that we have.
Nope.
We have the same problems with or without Eichel. We just have Eichel. And Toronto has shown us you can't just shoot your way to success.
That's it. You can't just.
You're absolutely correct. You brought up that we become Toronto basically if we get Eichel, then we have Kane, Taves, Eichel, DeBrincat. That's similar to the structure of the big four there.
It's honestly about the same.
What does it leave us with? We still have a bunch of questions on defense. We still have the lack of goaltending depth, and we're still a couple years away from the playoffs. It doesn't solve anything. I love Eichel to death, but it doesn't solve our problems.
Speaking of players that don't solve any organizational problems, the Red Wings have been rumored to be in on Seth Jones for this upcoming season. I'm just going to start by saying it. No, please no.
You don't think?
No, because look, Detroit has got Moritz Seider in the pipeline, Gustav Lindstrom in the pipeline. We're going to assume that either Dennis Cholowski or Giovanni Smith probably gets picked up by Seattle. But assuming they take Cholowski, we've still got Philip Hronik as well. So what does Seth Jones do for the Wings in the short term? We're still not going to be a playoff team next year, I don't think we will anyway. And Seth Jones is going to be a UFA at the end of next season anyway. So people are talking about wanting to trade for Seth Jones. Why are you going to trade first or second round draft picks for a guy who probably is gone at the end of next season? Because he doesn't want to hang around for a rebuild.
He's just spent all this time in Columbus tasting just getting into the playoffs and like winning a round of the playoffs. But no, he's a rental. Whoever gets him this year, he's either a rental or he's going to a team where they are missing one defenseman. They are one defenseman away from making it. And maybe Boston.
God dang it. Stop it.
I know. I hate it. But like, maybe Boston.
Oh my God.
You're a monster.
I've been called worse. So, but yeah, I don't think that he serves either of our organizations because we're not one defenseman away right now.
I don't know. I don't like the move. I don't like the idea of the Wings picking up Seth Jones this year. Again, doesn't solve any problems. And can you trade him next or at the trade deadline? Sure, but I don't think you're going to get what you pay for him this year back at the trade deadline. So
what it does, and I hate this, it gives the fans a sense of, oh, they're really going for it. They're making moves. They're fighting for it. And what does it do?
Nothing.
What does it realistically do? Then we just get burned a year from now. I mean, stick with the slow and steady progress.
Slow and steady works. I mean, the Wings were in the playoffs for 25 years. That should buy management a lot.
25 or 26? Wasn't it 26?
No, it was 25.
I was counting.
But either way, we made the playoffs for 25 straight years. I think that buys management some patience. And looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think it buys Steve Yzerman some patience. So I'm not in a rush to go out and buy or trade for some big name defenseman when we have some pretty decent pieces in the pipeline right now. And we're still a couple steps away. We're getting closer, but we're still a couple steps away.
What we are both building right now is sustainability. And adding Eichel or adding Seth Jones is the antithesis of stability. What we're doing then is high risk, high reward. And right now, I think that the Red Wings are doing a really good job of sustainable rebuilding, laying the foundation for maybe not an all-star dream cup team, but a competent contending team that you're going to be excited to watch for years to come. And that's what I'm hoping at least the Hawks get back to, is like a team that's exciting to watch and in it every year.
I mean, David, what's your take? I mean, are you kind of in the same boat I'm in, or like?
Yeah, I mean, we have enough guys in the pipeline. We have our cider. We have, and I don't want to give up what we'd have to give up for him.
Like Seth Jones, I hope he goes to a team where he can win a cup. I hope he goes to that team. But that team's not Detroit and it's not Chicago. That's not the team that he's looking to go to. And it doesn't make sense to pick him up.
Of course not.
We can transfer to the rest of the NHL because, I mean, we're kind of in the final four of the playoffs right now. And I mentioned at the top of the show, but I don't think any of us saw Montreal or New York Islanders in this race. Vegas is playing against Montreal. The Tampa Bay Lightning are playing against the New York Islanders.
Tampa Bay, I'll do another score check. Hold on.
Please do.
Current score check. Oh, it's over 5-0.
Well, there's that. That said, that's one game.
Yep. So it's going to be Tampa 3-2, right? Yeah, because they're tied 2-2. So Tampa will be up going for the clincher next game.
I mean, both the Islanders and Montreal are, the general consensus is they shouldn't be there. Right? I mean, like that's the belief, is like, oh, they shouldn't be there. That said, that I would not count them out. They're teams that when their back's against the wall, they fight and they're hungry. They're clearly hungry. And it's not the first time that teams have knocked out better teams because of pure willpower and like playing their game and knowing their game. I would be shocked if Montreal makes it through Vegas, but the Islanders, I think, have a legitimate possibility of beating the Lightning if they can neutralize them. Then it's just get enough shots through, and sooner or later you'll get one in.
I honestly think the Montreal-Vegas series is going to be a closer series than Tampa Islanders. I think Tampa's going to win it, but the Canadians have really shown that they're the force to be reckoned with. I mean, they only lost the other night in overtime, 2-1. They won 3-2 in overtime, so they kept it close. 3-2. Like it's a lot closer than I think the Tampa Islanders, whereas Tampa beats the Islanders by a few goals. The Islanders beat them by a few goals. Tonight we're seeing Tampa just utterly decimating them 5-0. I think Montreal could surprise us and hold their own and possibly win the series.
I mean, whoever wins the Montreal Vegas series, that's why I want to win the cup.
Yep.
If Tampa eliminates the Islanders.
If Tampa eliminates the Islanders, I don't want Tampa going back to back.
Me neither.
That's company that only a few teams in recent years hold, with the Penguins and with the Wings. I am not a fan of the Penguins, so I was really mad when they did that. I was really hoping we could have done it 08-09. Batman had other plans, you know.
That said, I'm with you guys. I think that whoever wins the Vegas Montreal series, that's who I'm pulling for the cup. I don't want Tampa to get it. And just because I don't, like I said, I don't like the back-to-back. And you know, Yeah. Well, no. Okay, putting words in my mouth there. But no, I've been big on Vegas from the beginning, and Montreal's just an exciting. It's got a miracle run kind of feel to it. The kids
Absolutely.
that they shouldn't be there. Even the Islanders, like, all right, put together a team that people are like, yeah, okay, like they've got all these different pieces. Montreal, and it's so silly because like we're such a powerhouse for a long time, but now they're not.
What you just said is like a team of like, I forget what you said, team of misfits, whatever. That's how I feel about Vegas. Like
Oh,
when
definitely.
Vegas was created, it was just the players that the teams were like, we are going to put you up and we don't really want you.
We can afford to
we can afford to lose you. And that's what I loved about Vegas their first year, is that they were a team of just players that were hungry. Like, you didn't want us. We're going to show you why you shouldn't have gotten rid of us. And they came very close to winning the cup. Like I think they destroyed every team they played in the Western Conference.
Oh yeah, they
playoffs.
Did. Yeah, they just hit the Capitals at the wrong time.
And I was just hoping they do that to the Capitals too, because I don't like Caps fans.
Right, exactly.
The thing that I love about Vegas is I love how everyone is like sitting there looking at Vegas and like, oh, well, everyone knew this team was going to be good. Don't lie to yourself. Like, nobody really was looking at Jonathan March or so and was like, oh man, we just lost a superstar. Nobody was looking at half of that roster and going, man, we just good pieces.
No. They got William Karlsson.
That's why it was so exciting watching them play. I'm just like, this team's doing really well. And then they went to the playoffs, and I'm like, their first freaking season, and they're in the playoffs, and then they were just killing people, and I'm like, I'm all aboard. I love it. And the showmanship they had, like they had the Golden Knight come out and like kill the whatever team.
They put on a heck of a show. Like they leaned into what makes Vegas a spectacle, and they found a way to integrate that into hockey while making it not like hokey and cheesy, but like just a phenomenal Vegas style spectacle. And I appreciate that.
That's why they're a team I enjoy, like when they do well. Like,
yeah,
I want the Kraken to do well, mainly because we're Squid Bros.
No, I love that. But yeah, no, I'm pulling for Seattle. You know, I've seen people that are like, oh, it's ridiculous that Vegas was able to put this team together and then they don't have to give up a player to Seattle, without realizing that they also don't get a chunk of the money that Seattle put in. The other teams do. Mm-hmm. And it was in their contract. Like one of you mentioned, hindsight's 2020. Nobody went into this going, oh, they're going to be able to field. They were able to field a team of NHL players, which is better than a lot of the expansion teams before got.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you're putting in like $1 billion, however much money they put into that thing to get the license and get it all off the ground, you should be able to at least put in NHL caliber guys, even if they're third, fourth line caliber guys. You should be able to get that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable.
You know what I've really enjoyed about like about Montreal making their playoff run? I've really enjoyed watching Cole Caulfield and Brendan Gallagher.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Man, I don't know why I never paid attention to Gallagher before, but he's really good.
People slept on Gallagher a lot. I had him in fantasy, and he's a phenomenal player. Like, he doesn't get a lot of accolades or anything like that. But like, if you stop and actually look at his stats and look at the way he plays the game, he's someone that I think anybody would want on their team.
I mean, who's the other kid? Kotkaniemi.
Yep.
He's actually kind of impressed me a decent bit this playoffs as well.
I think Kotkaniemi has taken a step forward. I think Nick Suzuki has really taken a step forward and ramped up his game as a young kid who's really displaying like who he is. And again, you've got like, I hate Corey Perry. That said, I think he's playing a really great role on this team full of like kids and like 20 somethings.
Mm-hmm. Like we kind of joke about, veteran presence and intangibles, but
It's a real
Corey
thing.
Perry's bringing those, and he's bringing them fairly cheap to Montreal, that's the thing. We say you can't pay these fourth line guys $4.25 million like he did just an applicator, but Corey Perry's not making that kind of money, and he's still a competent NHLer.
Yep.
It just, I don't know. I really have enjoyed the Vegas and Montreal series so far.
And I love that they're letting Cole Caulfield do his thing.
Mhm.
He's a small kid. He's undersized, but man, he's a wizard with he's able to snipe. He's able to take shots from all different areas. He knows how to shoot the puck.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that they've let him, they've sort of taken the kid gloves off of him and said, just listen, go out there and do your thing. And he's in the right position at the right time. He's making smart shots. I'm thrilled for him right now.
Yep.
I don't think there's anything else on the NHL news topics to talk about. The playoffs are the main thing because, again, we're not going to have any major news until the Seattle expansion draft is over, till the regular NHL draft is over. So what is that? July 21st and 22nd, I think, are the dates for the Seattle draft and the expansion draft. So there's not really going to be a ton of news until those happen. But after that, it's going to be picking back up. I mean, as soon as the Seattle expansion draft is over, the next day is going to be transactions galore. Maybe even not just for like the Hawks and the Wings, but just league wide, there are going to be tons.
There's going to be chaos.
Welcome back,
I love
Bobby
it.
Ryan. Welcome back, Bobby Ryan.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, I hope you guys get Bobby Ryan back.
But that's kind of it for the show tonight. Because again, there's not really a ton to talk about. It's the playoffs, which neither of our teams are involved in, and then nothing, because nothing's going on in the hockey world right now except for players training during their quote unquote off season to get ready. So that's it. If you're still with us, whether it be watching or listening, we appreciate you guys checking out the podcast. At the end of the day, this is a show that is by fans for fans. It's for you all. There is no sort of corporate sponsorship or anything like that. So we get to just sort of say what we want on this show. If you enjoyed what you heard or watched, feel free to give us a like, follow, share, whatever the social media currency is of choice on the platform that you get this our podcast content through. We are on Facebook. We are on YouTube, SoundCloud, Twitter. Plenty of ways to get in touch with the podcast and give us sort of feedback, critiques, topic discussion questions, whatever you want to give us. We love interacting with you guys every once in a while when we get the chance. So feel free to give it to us. Give us any sort of like questions or feedback, content ideas, anything like that. We would love to engage with you guys. A quick update. Our awards show is potentially slated to be next weekend, or next week, I should say. We're going to try to put a little bit of a show together. Not a ton of stuff is going to happen after that, because at that point it's going to be the Stanley Cup Finals and that's it. We'll probably move to the every other week schedule at that point, assuming we have news to talk about. That's really it, though. And that's going to be it for our show. As always, thank you guys again for tuning in and watching and listening to the show. We appreciate it. And in the meantime, you all take care of each other, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And let's just, look forward to what's going to be happening in the future with both of these clubs. You guys take care.